Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is our guest expert, Courtney Morris. She is an assistant professor of African American and Women's Studies at Penn State University. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Sonali.
Well, President Barack Obama, during his trip to China this week, has announced a climate agreement between the world's two largest polluters. The U.S. has pledged to cut 2005 level emissions by 26 to 28% by the year 2025. This target is more ambitious than earlier pledges. China, however, did not make any pledges to cut emissions, but instead promised that its emissions would peak by 2030 or earlier. China's coal industry is expanding at a dangerous rate. Even though China emits more greenhouse gases than any other nation in the world, its per capita emissions are less than half that of the U.S. Now, Courtney, first, what do you make of Obama taking a relatively bold step on this issue, even if it's still not nearly enough? And second, why does China think the world even has until 2030? Won't the planet have melted by then?
Well, something like that. I mean, certainly there's one wonders how it is that politicians from around the world seem to act as though climate change is some sort of topical issue that they have the luxury of debating. Climate change is not some sort of topical issue. It is the fundamental crisis facing humanity at this point in our history, and frankly, facing the future of the planet. And so it's encouraging to see President Obama taking a firm position on dealing with CO2 emissions and trying to develop more comprehensive relationships with China. Certainly, it's a gesture to other nations that they also need to participate in this global effort to deal with the crisis of climate change. But frankly, the larger issue here is that these kinds of piecemeal solutions that President Obama and that China are offering simply are not enough. The fact of the matter is that the effects of climate change, we're already feeling them. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a report last week talking about the fact that we are already have set into motion effects that cannot be undone, and that if we hope to avoid some of the worst effects of climate change, including impacts on agricultural production, rising sea levels, more extreme weather patterns, then we need to take more rapid and radical steps to deal with the issue. And that, frankly, is not what we're seeing coming out of these talks with China and the U.S.
Financial regulators have fined 5 major Western banks to the tune of $3.3 billion today for unethical trading in foreign currency markets. According to the New York Times, quote, at issue is the approximately $5.3 trillion traded each day in foreign exchange in the world's biggest financial market. The exchange rates are set daily, and traders were, quote, accused of rigging the rates so that their own banks could profit. The banks facing fines are Switzerland's UBS, Britain's HSBC, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and the US's JP Morgan Chase and Citigroup. The regulators initiating the fines had access to email communications between traders, which revealed improper collusion. Now, Courtney, doesn't this story make the best possible case for financial regulation? The free marketeers would have us believe they don't need any regulation, right?
Well, that's what they keep telling us, and I imagine that they feel if they keep saying it long enough, then we'll start to believe it. But the evidence just simply doesn't support that case. I mean, when we look at the people the names that keep coming up in these cases of corporate malfeasance, JP Morgan, Chase, I mean, it's overwhelming. These people clearly are not in a position to regulate themselves. They lack both the will and the moral conscience to regulate themselves. And so it's obvious that the federal government, at least in the United States, and one would hope in other Western European nations, that these states need to step in and regulate the financial sector because it simply is not able to regulate itself. And beyond that, beyond issuing fines, which this is an industry that is making money in the trillions of dollars. So fines of $3.3 billion really don't mean anything to these people. What we really need to be talking about is seeking criminal prosecution for these actions and making sure that the people who run these institutions are held accountable for the choices that they make. We just need to move beyond fines and tough rhetoric and start instituting more comprehensive regulation of these industries.
And maybe some criminal penalties. And finally, openly defying the president who appointed him, FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler has decided he wants to appease telecom companies like Comcast over the public good on the issue of net neutrality. Just days after President Obama made a clear and strong statement urging the strictest possible protection of a free and open internet, Wheeler, whose proposed rules would violate those principles, said he would rather protect business interests. In an address to business executives of companies like Google and Yahoo, Wheeler said, quote, "What you want is what everyone wants, an open internet that doesn't affect your business. What I've got to figure out is how to split the baby," end of quote. Now, Courtney, isn't that expression that he used exactly what you're not supposed to be able to do? You're not supposed to be able to split the baby. Why is Wheeler not even bothering to hide his allegiance to business interests as FCC chairman? Isn't he supposed to be protecting the public good?
Yes, I mean, as FCC chairman, his job is to protect the baby, not to, try to figure out who's going to get a piece of it. And the fact of the matter is that that in this case, the baby belongs to the public. The internet is a public good that was created through public funding, and is essentially a public utility, which is what it should have been classified as a title under Title II, and that failed. That didn't happen. But nevertheless, the FCC has been holding hearings on the issue of net neutrality. 4 million people have come out and participated in the hearings. I also participated in those hearings. And the vast majority of the people who have come out and spoken at the FCC hearings, 99% of those people have spoken in favor of upholding net neutrality. So the people are speaking very loudly and clearly. The question is whether Mr. Wheeler is going to pay attention to them, or if he's going to ultimately support the people who have been supporting him. He's a former lobbyist, telecommunications lobbyist, so it's not surprising that this is the position that he's taking.
Courtney Morris, always a pleasure to have you on. We'll talk to you again next week.
Bye, Sonali.
Courtney Morris is an assistant professor of African American and Women's Studies at Penn State University. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.